All right, welcome to this July 11th meeting of the Budget, Capital, and Personnel Committee. I'm calling the committee to order. I want to apologize to anybody watching from the public, but I'm having technical difficulties getting my video cam to work, so I'll try to adjust that later. Meanwhile, we'll move forward. We do have quorum. So I will ask that somebody move the minutes.
Deborah, we can hardly hear you.
Oh, good Lord. I don't know what to do about that, Mike. I'm speaking at my usual boisterous level. Can you? Hello?
Hey, Deborah, it's Bill Troy. I can hear you clear as a bell.
As can I. I'm wondering if in chambers, the volume on the large TV is all the way up. Okay, it's not, it looks like, yes, that is. Rob's out sick today, so we're just tackling this slightly different.
Okay, so can people in chambers still not hear me? Henry?
We can make it work, but we might have to ask you to repeat.
Okay, I will speak as loud as I can, and I apologize to the other people on video. If it's too loud for you, turn your sound down. Okay, so clearly we're having technical difficulties, including my camera and the ability of people in chambers to hear me. We're going to try to go forward as best we can. So minutes approval. Can I get a motion on the minutes? I see Greg's hand and Rich seconds. Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, if not, we'll proceed to a vote. Lee?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So the minutes are passed. Changes to the agenda. Katrina was so kind as to fill me in on what's been going on downtown. So we will be pulling resolution 9C, the budget appropriations and adjustment for the increases under the white collar agreement. There need to be some additional adjustments made to that. We will not be voting on that today. We will be adding the resolution that we received, contingency fund request to support new security function at the Human Services Building. We're going to need to vote on that. Could I get a motion, please? Greg moves. Can I get a second from someone? Rich, thank you. So voting to add this to the agenda. Lee?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So thank you. We will take that up.
I'm sorry, Deborah, did you say we're not going to add the other one? Budget appropriation adjustments?
We're removing the only one we're striking, Mike, is 9C, which is on your agenda. We are adding the one for the Human Services Building security.
Okay. Katrina's helped me here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. Do we have any public comment, Katrina?
Yes, Deborah, we have Zach Wynn here.
Okay. Zach, I think you're kind of a regular contributor, so I don't necessarily need to repeat all the warnings. Be short, be concise, be done in 3 minutes, and don't insult anyone.
I'll do my best. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Zach Wynn. I live here in Ithaca. As far as the issue of the Human Services Building and the funding you're considering setting aside for sheriff's deputies to provide security there, there are issues in that surrounding area, specifically relating to the Southern Tier AIDS program, which is directly adjacent to the Human Services building. And I can foresee a scenario where those officers are not able to provide their function doing security because they're consistently being called out to deal with just issues going on right at the property. And I'm curious if there are any funds that are given to the county to the Southern Tier AIDS program that could possibly be held or rescinded in an attempt to get them to secure their facility. I've communicated with management of staff, and they've contemplated fencing the porch, which is essentially an open drug scene 16 hours per day when staff management is not in control of the facility. And I think until the actual root causes of the issues surrounding that the Human Services building are addressed, this is just like a kind of a Band-Aid on an open wound. So I also believe that since you've had the departure of our Chief Equity and Diversity Officer, Ms. Carruthers, you are now attempting to find another person to fill that position. I suggest that position be eliminated, and any funds used for that position and be better utilized elsewhere. I believe that the role of diversity and inclusion officer is essentially like a political commissar, something out of the Soviet Union. Is really just not necessary at all. These decisions should be best left to be made to the various department heads and committees, so on and so forth. They don't need someone overseeing every aspect of the decisions that are made and putting them through the lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So with that said, I yield the remainder of my time, and thank you.
Thank you, Zach. Yeah, I acknowledge that we have problems in the neighborhood in which our Human Services building is located. But on the other hand, we also have an obligation to provide the safest possible environment for the employees who work in that building and for the members of the public who are there to get services. So we may not be able to solve the problems in the neighborhood, but we can certainly solve the problems in the building that we control. So that said, moving forward, Lisa, I think I will let you go forward with the county administrator's report. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. I just have a few quick updates for the committee today. The first, I want to welcome 2 new staff members who weren't here at the time we met at the last committee meeting. Bridget Nugent joined county administration as our deputy county administrator just last week, and no, 2 weeks ago. I'll get my timing right. And 2 weeks prior to that, Norma Jane joined our team, rejoined the county as our budget director, and very glad to have both of them on board. And we began departmental budgeting meetings today. Norma and myself and Samantha Freilich, our budget analyst, met with 2 departments this morning and are starting 3 solid weeks of meetings with departments to go over their budgets. So we're looking forward to that. Just a couple of other brief updates. I wanted to make the committee aware that the county has a position, a health and safety coordinator position that has historically for the last long stretch of time been positioned at the county health department. There was a period of time where that position was we were able to receive state reimbursement through the health department for that title. That's has not been the case for at least a decade. And that title just became vacant. And so in conversations with Frank Krupa and our HR commissioner, determined that position probably isn't best located in the health department, but would be better located more centrally. And so we have, after discussion, determined that we would take that position on in county admin. This is a revenue neutral transaction. It's just moving the position and the title from one department to another. But given that the nature of the role can be quite confidential in terms of how departments are functioning and some of the related PESH complaints and other things, we thought it would be best moved into a confidential department. And also given the need to perhaps place a stronger emphasis or reconsider our building security, which is one aspect of the role, we thought it would be best positioned under the supervision and the role of county administration. So as we advertise for that position, that role is going to be with our office. And then lastly, last week we convened or reconvened the municipalities on the shared services panel for consideration for shared services plan for 2023. Bridget helped to facilitate that group. It was probably our third meeting, and this the governor recently made the determination that the shared services plans are no longer required for submission by the county. And after discussion with the municipalities, they felt that we did not have plans shaping up for 2023 that probably warranted further exploration and plan submission. So the meeting ended with a determination that we won't be submitting a shared services plan for 2023, that the cost savings probably ratio could not be well justified. At the same time, it was a very productive meeting, and the municipalities present felt that the collaboration that occurs informally through the group is a very productive use of time, and those discussions would continue at TCOG. So just wanted to make you aware of that. Those are all my updates, and I'd be happy to answer questions on any of those items.
Thank you, Lisa. I see we have a question from Rich John.
Thank you. Lisa, I'm curious how you plan to divide activities, what you're assigning to Brenda. And if Brenda wanted to speak to us, I'd love to.
Bridget?
Bridget, sorry.
It's okay.
See, that's COVID talking. Sorry.
Are you sick?
I was sick when I spoke to you and Shauna last week. I didn't know it. I was sort of realizing I had a terrible headache. I went home. It was like a hammer hit me. I took the test like an hour after I talked to you. Yes.
Are you feeling better now?
Much better. Except
I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah.
Your naming lobe is affected. It has long COVID.
That's it.
Okay. So, yeah. Lisa, Bridget, did you want to address that?
Question, Rich. I want to make sure I heard you. How we're dividing responsibilities at this stage?
Yes.
Sure. So we don't have a second deputy county administrator yet. So in the interim, and while my time is being pulled more toward budget, Bridget has been spending her time, convening the shared services panel, following up on emergent issues that come up with departments. And we are working on an operational strategic plan and a grant application for the strategic plan that she's working on in conjunction with planning. Do you want to chime in, Bridget, other things that I'm forgetting?
Sure. I've also been looped into a number of the Reimagining Public Safety initiatives, and will be taking on the facilitation of the Criminal Justice to Alternatives to Incarceration Advisory Board.
Thank you.
to name a few, and other duties as assigned, and they seem to be getting assigned on a daily basis.
Welcome to the county administration department. Does anybody else have any questions for?
I don't know if you can see me, Deborah. I moved down closer to the screen to try to hear you better.
Oh.
I had a question.
Go ahead, Mike.
Lisa, how are we doing for space and administration?
With the addition of one more position, we will be at full capacity. We have one remaining area with a desk that we can assign a person. There is not a door to that space. We'll have facilities come and take a look and see if there's more that can be done for that space, but we're certainly at capacity.
Thank you.
So Lisa, so when you say one more person, we need to replace our equity and diversity officer, and we need to add an additional deputy county administrator. And now we need to add a health and safety director. So is that the additional person, or is that person going to be sitting on the stairs?
No, that accounts for all of those positions.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, Mike, I fixed my camera, and I'm wondering if what I did to fix the camera might impact your ability to hear me. Are you hearing me any more clearly?
Yeah, I'm closer to the speaker on the screen.
Okay, well, you're just going to have to jump down and put your hand on because I cannot see you. All right. If that's it for Lisa, we can move to Rick Snyder for a Director of Finance report.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Hi, Rick.
I'd like to announce, even though I've done this with the GO committee last week, that Daryl Tuttle, our new Director of Accounting Services, has been with us now for one whole pay period, 2 weeks. And we are making strides on completing our audit and our financial statements. And Lori Pitsley is our new Financial Accounts Payable Clerk. She has completed 2 weeks here and has been completely inundated with training from a variety of staff members. So Lori is working out well. So if you stop by finance at any time in the future, you can meet Daryl and Lori, some new faces here that bring energy and vigor to our department. And I am happy to announce that we are on track with the audit. Although we are 1 month late from what we originally planned at the beginning of the year, we were supposed to be having our audit report presented to this committee today. If you check old minutes, that this was the slot in which the auditors were going to give their report for fiscal year 2021. That's been moved to your next meeting, which is August 8th. So please try to arrange that, Kathy and Deborah, into our agenda so that we give the auditors ample time at the August 8th budget capital and personnel committee meeting to give their entire report for fiscal year 2021.
How much time do you think you'll need for that, Rick?
Usually give them 45 minutes.
Oh, boy. Okay.
And even at that amount of time, they really give a pretty quick review of the highlights. After which I will be presenting to the legislature at a following legislative meeting after that, my finance report for the year that has some important information, charts and graphs and things that we need to know going forward. And that will be after that budget and capital meeting on August 8th. So hopefully by the end of August, we'll be bringing to you, the legislature, the full financial report from the finance office. So we are kind of back on track. We are still 1 month behind. We still haven't submitted the state AUD. They have not come down and arrested us yet for not doing that, but we've been talking with them almost on a daily basis because there are some fine nuances in our financial report that don't fit real nice and pretty into the state auditing model. So we are planning on wrapping that up this week. The auditors did prepare and send to me our first draft of the financial report late on Friday. My staff and I are reviewing that for this entire week, at which point we'll make any changes and corrections that we feel are noted. By Friday of this week, we'll get a second draft of the financial report early the following week, at which point we have another week to comb through it and make adjustments and fine tuning to it. So with that all said, we've just received the first draft of our financial report. So I'll be able to release to you some preliminary fund balance figures soon as we come up for air, so you can see how well we're doing in the general fund. And the only other thing I'll take any questions on any of that financial report information before I share with you real quick a room tax report for the second quarter.
Any questions? You just shout out because you're very small on my screen. Can't see hands. Okay, hearing no shouts, Rick, I think you can go forward.
Okay, let's go for it. You should be seeing a room tax report. The first and second quarter here are shown in the left-hand column. Are you seeing that report?
Yes, sir.
All right. You'll see we went up from $593,600 in 2021 up to $980,685 for the second quarter total room tax. Over here in the middle, it breaks it down into the hotel portion. Bed and breakfast portion is in the right-hand two columns. But I'll be sharing this with the entire legislature next Tuesday night. It's already in the packet for next week. It also has an 11-year year-to-date graph that shows comparative numbers. Second quarter room tax is up 65.2% in the second quarter from last year. Year over year is up 79.3%. At $980,000, this is the best quarter we've had in room tax for a long, long time. Any questions on room tax?
Shout out if you've got one. All I can see is Rick's screen.
Okay, I'll shrink it down.
Thank you.
Rick, this is Lee. What's the entire budget for the year for room tax?
I've got that here. Look. It is $2,400,000. So we're now 1.7 million out of a $2.4 million budget.
So you're on track to exceed that by at least 50%.
Yeah, we're well over budget at this point.
It's nice to have some good news, Rick. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Deborah,
Yes.
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead, Henry.
Rick, you also, I think you mentioned the other day that the hotels that have not paid actually paid this quarter?
Correct.
So all the hotels have paid?
Yeah, well, we have the original report says that there was one hotel that is delinquent, and then it didn't agree with some of the numbers Nick was giving us, Nick Helmholt from planning. And there's two hotels that paid us 2/3 of their bill. In other words, they're on a monthly payment plan with us to catch up instead of a quarterly payment plan like the rest of the hotels. And so those two hotels have paid us 2 out of the 3 months that fell in this second quarter. So we didn't really know how to list them as delinquent. At first we had 1 was delinquent, and then we had 3 were delinquent. And so it's a little bit confusing, but 1 is really completely delinquent, and that is all. And all the rest have really done well catching up. And it's mostly because of Holly Mosher, our deputy county attorney, who's been very persistent in mailing out notices. And we have gotten a little bit more, how can I say? I don't want to say heavy-handed. I want to say
we're
we've
more
been a little bit
forceful, Rick.
professional, but yet forceful in dealing with
Aggressive.
some of these that have been continually and habitually delinquent. And she has really done an excellent job working with the Treasury staff and bringing these all to date. There were 4 new bed and breakfasts added, and there was 2 bed and breakfasts that were closed. But that'll all be in the report as you see it in writing in your legislative agenda for next Tuesday night's meeting.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Rick, and kudos to Holly.
Yes.
Holly.
Thanks,
That's
Bill.
great. Yes. If there's nothing else for Rick, we can move on. Okay, thank you, Rick. Henry, before I say anything, do you have anything to report from WDIC?
Yes, we had a meeting about 2 weeks ago. We discussed the Cayuga Nation resolution, which will probably be coming to the legislature through a member filed resolution about the leadership of the Cayuga Nation and how it's muddled and everything else. We also had a discussion about, we had a recap of Juneteenth. We also had a recap of Team Jedi. And we also had a recap of the strategic planning process and how we're going to fold in our diversity strategic planning into the county's strategic planning, which will happen next year.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Henry? Just shout out. Okay, hearing nothing, Henry, I think you're good.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you. I don't really have a report, just a couple of words of caution as we move forward. As you will see with one of the resolutions on our agenda today, we're looking at some big bumps in our wages and fringes under these new collective bargaining agreements. And we have yet to really address the shortfall between what we reserved for retro payments and what we eventually agreed to in retro payments, all of which is to say that there are going to be some major personnel costs that we're going to have to address either through contingent or general fund. And I'm hoping that you all will bear that in mind when we start talking about the size of our general fund going forward and what we plan to do with that money. Another piece of this is that, as all of you have probably noticed, just going to the grocery store, the cost of everything has gone up, not just for us as individuals, but also for the county as a whole. This morning, I was at a Soil and Water Conservation District board meeting, and John Negley, our director, pointed out that the cost of seeds of various kinds has gone up 150% over last year. There are a lot of factors that contribute to that, and we may be in the perfect storm of inflation, but I think we need to bear the increasing costs of supplies and personnel and everything the county does when we start planning and evaluating our financial position, because I don't think it's as rosy as some of us would like to think it is. I mean, we're doing better than many counties because of the prudent management policies that were put in place by previous legislatures, but we're in hard times now and we need to bear that in mind. So on that cheery note,
Deborah?
Yes?
Thanks for that caution. You're exactly right. I would also add to your comments that we don't know yet what the increase in pension costs are going to be, or the increase in health insurance costs, both of which are likely to go up.
Yeah, good point, Mike. I mean, everything's going up. So we need to be cautious. We need to be prudent. We need to be good stewards of the county taxpayers' money. All right, then. Is somebody here from Human Resources for a report?
Deborah, I don't have anybody here.
Okay. All right, then. I guess we will move on to resolutions. So let me put my glasses on. And Lisa, are most of these resolutions coming out of your department so that you can address any questions?
A good number of them, yes, but not all.
Okay. Okay, great. So the first resolution we have is appropriation from Contingent Fund, County Attorney's Office, ID 10962, and I'd appreciate a motion on that one. Rich John moves. Gonna get a second. Thank you, Greg. Any discussion or issues on this? Lisa, do you want to just kind of explain? This is a pretty routine replacement pay and terminal pay reimbursement motion. Is it not?
I see Bill here with his hand up to speak to it.
Okay, great.
I can speak to it. No, this is a different appropriation, Deborah, than the last one you just mentioned. What happened here is we have a longtime employee, Erin Murphy, and I made a request that we raise her pay to be equal to the administrative assistant or secretary or right-hand person, if you will, of the DA. And she went up, I think, one level after 25 plus years here. And she's really just a huge asset to us. So I thought that was the proper thing to do, and it's been approved to this point, and we'll see how you folks feel about it.
Is this, wait a second. Oh, okay. I was looking at the one from the sheriff's office. Thank you for correcting me, Bill. All right, then. Thank you for that. Does anybody have any questions for Bill? Seeing none, are we ready to vote? Lee?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So we agree with you so far, Bill. All right. The next one is
Thank you.
the routine motion I was thinking of. Resolution appropriation from Contingent Fund, replacement pay and terminal pay reimbursement, Sheriff's Office, ID 10977. Can I get a motion on that, please? Rich moves. Lee, is that a second?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on this one, folks?
Just, Deborah, can I ask a question of Lisa?
Sure.
Yeah, directed as much for us newcomers as the others. Fiscal policy remain the same as far as when there's a disability, we're reimbursing the straight time that came out of disability to pay for those that are on leave after a certain period of time that the department has to absorb. But the backfill is still falling underneath the sheriff's office for probably the time and a half it costs to put somebody in where the disabilities are occurring. Does that remain the same?
Yes. Yes.
So really the cost of the disability is considerably higher to us, and we may see this cost come back later on if there's a shortfall in the sheriff's budget for what it's cost to backfill.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's a constant theme with the sheriff and the 207C and disability. Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure that nothing's changed in that, but I appreciate that because to those of us that are going to be working through the budget here for the first time, that these are some things that we'll want to keep in mind, and in keeping in theme with what Deborah and Mike have said about unexpected expenses. Thank you.
Yeah, that 207C is a killer. Anything else? Okay, we ready to vote on this one? Lee,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
and I'm a yes, so that passes. As I mentioned at the beginning, we've pulled Resolution C. So we'll go to Resolution D. 2022 budget appropriation and adjustments for wage and other negotiated increases. Employees Union of the Tompkins County Sheriff's Department, ID 11016. Can I get a motion on that, please? Oh, don't everybody be so reticent. Thank you, Greg. Okay, I'll second it. This one, Lisa, do you want to address this one? Because I'm really a little bit confused. This is the prospective increases for this year, right? Under the new agreement?
Yes, this is for the current year, 2022.
For road patrol.
For road patrol, so it's putting into place and adjusting the budget for this department along the various titles for to account for everything that we negotiated in the contract.
Okay. Wow.
I should also, it may, it would have made a little more intuitive sense if we could have considered both of the resolutions side by side, because what we're seeing here in this appropriation is that we are taking 18,253 out of the account that was allowance for negotiation. That was what was remaining in that account after the transfer for the white collar management and confidential. But we're not, we're still working on that resolution together with finance. So what was remaining in that account was the 18,000, and then the remainder in that that is needed to cover is the approximately 900,000 from the fund balance unallocated revenue. So essentially since 2017, when we fell out of contract with Road Patrol, there was an allowance for negotiation that was budgeted each year with certain assumptions made as to what the final amounts would be. If we didn't settle in a given year, that amount was taken from the budget and put into, what's the term? It's a restricted section of the fund balance. So we are spending that down. We spent the majority of it down for the white collar management and confidential negotiations. And this is the remainder. And this is what's needed to cover the balance for 2022. And then looking ahead prospectively, all of those negotiated increases are factored into the budget and the targeted amounts for 2023. So we have this to take care of the 2022 amount. And then secondly, when we finally settle the overarching contract with Road, we will have the differential for the
retro pay.
Yes.
So do we have nothing left in the allowance for negotiation fund for retro pay to Road Patrol?
That is correct.
So every penny of that's going to come out of the general fund?
Well, so we're this is gonna bear some more conversation with the finance department, because we may be able to make some adjustments based on a lower amount in the fringe rate.
But whatever it ends up costing, it's going to come out of the general fund.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay, and that's going to be a not insignificant amount because it goes back to 2017.
That's correct.
Thank you. Lee, I see your hand.
Thanks, Deborah. Just question again for you, Lisa, a little more education. So the first part is coming out of the negotiating money that you're using. The larger part in the budget process last fall, pending negotiations, is there money always put into contingency, anticipating an amount's going to come out when the contract is settled? So something must have been budgeted in anticipation of there being a contract, which would substantially cover the $901,000.
It's assumed that that's going to be a one-time payment that will come out of fund balance, essentially. Whatever the amount is that we are in excess of in terms of what we had budgeted in the allowance for negotiation, we're on the hook for, but it's one-time funds.
But you were expecting something in this neighborhood when you set the contingency fund last fall? Or
we did not budget for it in contingency, no.
No, it doesn't go in contingency, Lee. It goes in the
whatever fund. It was an anticipated cost is what I'm trying to get at.
Anticipated cost, yes.
But we under anticipated is what I'm saying. And as Lisa pointed out, the bulk of what was in that fund will go to pay the white collar increases, because that's a much greater amount. It's a much larger bargaining.
Right. Were we under anticipating by an awful lot?
This was a known amount.
Oh, no. I just wanted to say, so there's enough in the account to cover certainly the white collar contract, the white management confidential. The fringe rate ended up being a little less than what was budgeted. So some of the adjustments and some of the reason why the white collar resolution was stalled is because we're going to make adjustments to those lines within each budget, so that, and I think what we will realize is we'll have about enough to cover, well, we have one more settlement coming, so we want to make sure we anticipate that, and it'll leave a little bit of funding in there to cover it. But I think all in all, when it all shakes out, we'll have enough.
That's all I wanted to hear.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks, Norma. I see your hand, Rich.
Yeah, I was trying to follow the discussion and was hoping to look at the resolution, and I don't see it in the packet, and I went online at the meeting portal and it's not there. And I was looking for who might have sent it. Do you know where?
I think Katrina sent it.
Rich, I sent it out Friday evening, like probably 4:30, 5 o'clock.
Okay. Oh, did it go with the other resolution she sent?
Yeah.
Yeah, there were two resolutions in the email.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Do we have more questions on this?
It's Greg. Quick question.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Make my once a meeting statement on the confusing nature of some of these resolutions, as we only look at the number, but we don't look in the totality of the context in which you're asking us to evaluate if this is a worthwhile expense. I know in this case, the ship has sailed, right? Some of this is, we've already decided that this money is going out the door and this money is spent, and there's a procedural aspect to some of what we're doing. But when there is true contingency requests, sort of knowing where we are in the full picture is important. And I think to some of Lee's question, some of the confusion around this resolution is what sort of, because it sounds like there's restricted funds within the fund balance that are allocated towards these type of activities or anticipated expenses, but sort of not knowing where all those pieces fit together. Personally, it's just hard to wrap my mind around. So I know I've said that before, and I'll probably continue to say it. So hopefully we can find some way, either through, you know, pre-meeting communication or something, so that we just can see the fuller picture without creating, you know, an excessive amount of work or commitment on staff's time.
Also, to say, I believe that as the years went by and we put funds were budgeted and put aside for allowance for contingency, they were, you know, certain assumptions were made as to what those values would be. There were interest arbitration awards and other, you know, we're contractually obligated to spend this above what was put aside for that purpose. So, but I understand completely what you're saying. You'd like the context of what was in that fund and so on. Yes.
Perhaps we could consider, I hate to add to Rick's burdens, but perhaps on a quarterly basis, if we could just get some insight into the current status of the year's contingent fund, that would be helpful. Is something like that?
Yes. Typically we do that when we get caught up with these financial statements and the smoke clears here. We'll be coming out with contingency reports at the budget committee level and also at the legislative committee every month from here to the end of the year, every other month, well into March of next year when we're still doing contingency fund requests. So what you're asking for is in line with what we typically do. We just kind of get buried right now during June and July with financial statements. So that's our plan for the remainder of this year, is to keep you well apprised of what's in the contingent fund for this year.
Thank you. Greg, would that help?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, as much information as we can have as, you know, often, so that we're, again, I just want to make sure that it's clear what's available, and, you know, we're not overspending, we're in line with what's.
It's never enough. It's never enough. Rich?
Thanks. So I've found it and read it, and it looks like we're short $900,000. Is that the right reading, or is it some other number?
No, it's $900,000.
Yeah, and Deborah, as you said, you know, cash is cash, and in some ways, this is a loan that we took in our own favor, and that we didn't worry about the revenue, and now we're just paying back the loan. My concern, though, is that you try to make the taxpayers who get the benefit of a particular service pay for that service, and the 2022 taxpayers are going to be paying for services that were provided to taxpayers in prior years in this amount. You know, we can't change it, and it is, you know, there, and if you spread it over all the years of the open contracts, it's not that big a deal. But I would say from a lesson learned standpoint, perhaps when we're doing forecasting, we should be reserving more conservatively, even if we think it's above what we think we're going to end up negotiating, just so we don't run into this in the future.
I could add one more note. At the end of each year, we put in a special reserve in the general fund for what we estimate all retroactive pay increases would be. And that is put together with county administration. We had, I think, Samantha and Kevin and Dan, whoever was around at the time, help us work up that number for the end of 2021. So we add up all the outstanding contracts and we put a value on what we think is owed for all the outstanding contracts. There's a lot of moving parts, a lot of it's estimates, but we do book a reserve. I think this year's was like 5 or 6 million, somewhere around there at the end of each year for anything that's retroactive pay increases accrued. So we do mark that on our financial statement. So when you see this coming out of fund balance, it's really coming out of a reserve of fund balance. And I know that gets technical, but you know,
that's helpful, Rick. And maybe
we try to budget. We try to budget the raises for the ensuing years in a separate line item in the regular general fund budget, which is that odd negotiated settlements allowance for negotiation account that's kind of hidden in the back of the book. We put a pretty big number there for raises if we don't know what they're going to be for the ensuing year, but all retroactive pay that we think is owed at the end of a year, we do book that in a reserve. So that is not part of your,
Rick,
available fund balance.
If I could interrupt, Rick, maybe I misunderstood then. This $900,000, is that coming out of a reserve fund effectively that we anticipated, that we did set up and we properly estimated? Is that what you're telling us?
I don't think so.
No, that the retro pay increase comes from that reserve. The current year raises come from that allowance for negotiation regular pay line item. And then if you go over it goes to your regular general fund reserve. So this one really is, the 900,000 really is coming out of general fund reserves. Not any actual.
Again,
reserve.
I worry about being confused, Rick. You seem to say that you'd gone through this process and you'd set up reserves based on forecasting what we thought we would see. And I was saying, I think we probably have to be more conservative on that going forward. Are you agreeing with that or disagreeing?
Ask it to me again. Am I agreeing with being more conservative in?
Should we be setting aside larger amounts than what we have in the past? I think is basically Rich's question.
Thank you, Deborah. Yes.
And I think
I think what's confusing is that this year we have a series of raises that are all being done at different times. We had one large budget adjustment we did near the beginning of the year, which was for vacation payouts. People that had accrued vacation amounts that had gone over the amount that due to COVID, they were going to be paid. The legislature agreed to pay out amounts of vacation time that went over and above what their normal vacation. That budget adjustment has already been booked. So that was one set of increases for this year that hit the 2022 books. The second one is our retro pay increases. That's going to be another series of budget adjustments that's not part of these. These budget adjustments that you're looking at right now is just for the current year raises. Those current year raises come from this allowance for negotiation account in the 9101 unit. To the extent that current raises goes above that amount, it's got to come from general fund reserves. That's what's stated in these resolutions. You will see later on this year, which we haven't gotten to yet, retro pay adjustments that were payable to employees during 2022. That comes from a special reserve that doesn't come from your undesignated general reserve. That's a special allocated reserve that's already set apart. And that's the amount that I was talking about that we book at the end of each year to estimate the amount of retroactive pay. And sometimes those retroactive pays is for many years, like in the case of the Sheriff Patrol, it went back, I don't know how many years, a lot of years. You know, for some other unions, it's only 1 year or 2 years. But in the case of like Sheriff or Corrections, you might be going back many, many years. So that amount is always set up in a special retroactive pay reserve that's on our balance sheet at the end of the year. So I guess it's maybe, I hope I haven't made it more confusing, but we really set it up in 2 or 3 different places, depending the type of payout that it is. This year, it seems to be kind of excessive because we're paying out so much in one particular year. And that's just the way that the chips happen to fall because of the settlement dates and the retro pays, and then that extra vacation payout that was elected, but the legislator chose to do, et cetera, et cetera.
Lisa, I hear you have your hand up.
Yeah, so I think to Rich's question, the amount that is factored into the budget for allowance for negotiation is part of the county administrator's recommended budget annually if there are contracts that are outstanding, and that if there is a forecast at that time for what a labor settlement might look like in terms of a wage increase. My assumption and understanding would be that for 2017 through the present, each year, the county administrator at the given time would be budgeting an amount that would be fair and reasonable and equivalent to cost of living adjustment, which was much different, looked a lot different probably in years past than these last few years, particularly since COVID and cost of living has increased. And then the first 2 years of this contract were for the road patrol was determined by the interest arbitrator. So that amount was determined that way. So, and it was higher than I believe was previously budgeted. So your point's well taken that we could budget more conservatively. And I think that it really depends on the economic circumstances at the time that you're doing the forecasting.
Thank you, Lisa. And given all the variables at play here, I would think this is a difficult forecasting effort. Is that fair?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, lots of food for thought. Good conversation. Thank you, Rich.
Deborah?
Yes, Mike?
Don't want to prolong this, obviously, but it certainly makes me think about last year when we were debating our fund balance figure.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a recommendation out of finance for a range. And we had some of the legislators who were really interested in spending more of the fund balance, who wanted to have a set figure for that, which we ended up doing. Of course, Lisa's going to have to be looking at that when she's working on her budgeting. But I think what we're seeing with these kind of things is where the ups and downs of the fund balance are affected by things that come along, things that we make decisions about and maybe not thinking about fund balance when we're trying to settle labor negotiations, for example. I think we ought to, at some point, take another look at that fund balance figure and see whether it's still where we want to be.
Oh, boy, I can't wait to reopen that can of worms, Mike. Thanks a lot.
Well, you're more than welcome.
All right. Before I totally lose the thread, we have not voted on this Sheriff's Department resolution yet, have we?
No.
Okay, let's do that, folks. Lee.
Yes.
Greg.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Rich.
Yes.
And I am a yes. So thank you, everybody. And now we will move on to appropriation from contingent fund, former Baker Dental building deconstruction. Can I get motion on that, please. Bearing in mind that I can't hardly see the ledge chambers. So just shout out.
Deborah, because I'm chair of the F&I committee, this is where they wanted to go.
Okay, so Mike moves, Rich seconds, and Mike, I'm going to let you address this for everyone. Since it's your committee.
Yes, and again, I think there was quite a bit of discussion in F&I about this. We had figures brought to us about the value of both the Baker Building and the Red House on Tioga Street. Those of us that feel that perhaps the Baker, and of course, they didn't really want us to call it the Baker Dental Building. I think we probably should drop Baker out of the title and just call it the Dental Building. Some of us didn't really want to see us take down the dental building because it's fairly substantial building, has a steel superstructure in it, has a number of problems and was going to cost a lot of money to repair it. But I think the tipping point here was the fact that in order to make this building usable for county purposes, because it was a change under the New York State building codes from basically a medical practice to public offices, which is what we would be changing it to, it would require a lot of new things, such as the installation of a sprinkler system in the building, for example. A lot of the building offices are very small without windows. Also, the restrooms are not handicap accessible. Many of them are very small. So basically, in F&I, we heard a recommendation from our director of facilities. And I think, if I'm not speaking out of turn, at least I think from administration as well, saying that it probably would not make sense for us to expend the money to rebuild this building. That actually, if we took it down and we needed to build another building there sometime, for example, we could actually do it and have it built to current specs as well. I think, I don't have the figure in front of me, but I think it was like $2 million it was the estimate to put this building into usable format for the county. So I think the majority of the committee felt that it would be better to go ahead and take it down. And we know we want to keep the land because we are considering the possibility of building another office building at the corner of Buffalo and Tioga. And we will need the space, plus we need space for parking. So we aren't saying that we're going to sell the land right away. And after this one, we've got to tackle what we're going to do with the Red House.
That's a Jimi Hendrix song, isn't it? Red House? Never mind.
Is that Pink Floyd?
So, no, I think it's Jimi Hendrix, but that's okay. I think we ought to acknowledge that the proposal here is the cost of deconstruction as opposed to demolition. Is that not the case?
It's a little more expensive. But
yeah, I guess, do we have, I can't imagine it's hugely more expensive, but I was just wondering.
I don't think we actually had a figure for bare demolition, did we?
No, he looked at deconstruction. But as I recall, I don't think it was all that much more of a magnitude greater.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions?
It's Deborah, it's Greg.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely support this resolution, and I fully support the idea of deconstruction. I do think in the future, if this ever comes up and is the case again, I do think it's important to weigh the costs of demolition, deconstruction, and rehabilitation, right? I think there's three things there. So I just think in the future, it would be valuable to look at the, if it's $100,000 difference or what the case is, the case is definitely there for deconstruction. And I think it's a good thing. And I think we're doing the right thing. I just think it's prudent to also know what the alternative cost and what we are assigning a value to in terms of deconstructing and hopefully repurposing some of those materials. So I definitely support this, but that's just my comment. And I'm looking at all of the cost potential rather than just two of them.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good statement of how I feel as well, Greg. Thank you. Any other comments? If not, let's vote on this dental building deconstruction resolution. Lee?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Mike?
Reluctant, yes.
Okay, and I am a yes as well. So down it comes.
I would vote yes as well, Deborah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I figured you pretty much said everything you had to say on the last issue. All right. So now we have one last resolution, the one we voted to add at the beginning of the meeting, the contingency fund request to support new security function at the Human Services Building, ID number 11021. Can I get a motion on that, please? Greg moves. I see Mike Lane's hand over in the corner seconding it. Lisa, do you want to discuss this?
Sure, I'd be happy to introduce it. And I believe there are some department heads that are on the Zoom call that are from the Human Services Building. I know Kit was on the call and she had to jump off at 4, but so I'm glad to be not glad. Glad isn't the word, but I think it's important that this item be brought to the legislature for consideration because it's ultimately a policy decision. And it's been the topic of previous updates from county administration. We did discuss it last week at the GO committee. And so where there are several areas that we have been able to follow up to improve building security, including emergency notifications, communication, building lockdown procedures, et cetera, the increasing frequency and escalating violence that we're seeing around the area and in the Human Services Building is what I am bringing forth for your consideration and hoping to address through this proposal. I'd mentioned at GO for years, we as a county had prided ourselves on the accessible nature of our services and that they be made available as barrier-free as possible. And that commitment still hasn't changed, but I think that a higher level of security for the building is now warranted and would improve the environment and the access for the public, as well as the safety of the public and the staff in the building. So this resolution recommends a magnetometer to screen building visitors for weapons, as well as armed security staff, meaning sheriff's deputies, to screen for weapons and address incidents as they arise. To clarify, we currently have unarmed security in the building. They're part of the white collar unit. They've done an excellent job of responding to the ever increasing array of incidents and emergencies that are emergent in the building, in the lobby, and in other areas in and around the building. But those current staff are not equipped to screen for weapons. There's a county policy against weapons in county buildings, and we're seeing and understanding that many people accessing services in the building may be carrying weapons for their own protection, but we cannot adequately screen for them. So that is part of the impetus for this resolution. We've also recognized that since COVID, over a couple of years, for the last few years, the visitors to the building have actually decreased because the state has allowed our Department of Social Services to waive certain face-to-face requirements for accessing services. And so we know that fewer people are in the building and in the waiting area of the lobby. And even with that reduction of people, visitors, we are seeing an increase in these incidents. And we fully expect that probably in the early fall, those face-to-face requirements for DSS are going to be coming back to play, where we're going to have more visitors accessing the building required for to receive or re-up their services. So again, the resolution is for both the visitors at the building as well as staff. So happy to field any questions that you may have on that.
Thank you, Lisa. And Dan, I see Dan Cornell is here. And did you want to speak about this at this juncture?
Thank you. I really don't have anything to add to what Lisa said. We've had conversations and meetings about what the concerns are. I'm happy with the trajectory that we're on right now. And I think, unfortunately, we've come to a point where it's necessary to do this. A lot of the people who work here for me believe the same. And we've also heard many concerns from clients over the years, which seem to be increasing in frequency, just that they're afraid to come here. It's jeopardizing, it triggers trauma and lots of other things for them. So I think people would feel a lot more comfortable coming to the building if they knew that other people in the building did not have weapons.
Thank you. And thank you, Dan. Dan and his staff hosted Shauna and myself for a tour of their department and a discussion of the issues in the building a couple of weeks ago. And it was an eye-opener. So thanks for that, Dan.
Thank you for coming. I appreciate that.
All right. Any questions or concerns or comments?
Deborah?
Yes?
I just wanted to point out, I think it's important, and it is in the resolution, that these costs, we believe, are 70% reimbursable by the state.
That would be nice, yes.
Thank you for mentioning.
Lee?
Yeah, obviously, this will be an ongoing expense and probably a change in a target for the sheriff's office next year. And so we'll be seeing this again in the fall on a long-term basis. And kind of similar to Mike, I'll cast a reluctant vote yes. I'll save my reasoning for another time, but I think it is necessary for the employees and clients that we have. We've got to do something, and I think it's responsible. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I mean, I agree, Lee. I don't think anybody's real happy about having to do this. I certainly am not, but I don't think it's responsible of us to expect our employees or our clients to be exposed to the kind of danger that concealed weapons represent. And it's certainly easy enough to stick a gun someplace and walk into a building if there are no measures being taken to block that. Rich.
Thanks. Yeah, I would say our privilege of the floor guest did make a point that this neighborhood seems to have been in some significant change recently. Unfortunate change. I think this is a responsible step. I will support the resolution. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak to this before we take a vote?
Yeah, Deb, I don't know if I blend in with the chairs or I just, I know we're small on your screen.
Just wave your hands. And
Can you see me now? I don't know if this is a perfect solution, and I think I made these comments at Geo, but I think that this is a solution for right now and a solution to respond in the moment. I do hope as we continue to strengthen our conversation and relationship with the city of Ithaca around a safer community for all, that this is something that definitely is front and center, because as somebody astutely pointed out in Geo, many of the incidents were outside of the building. And as our guests from Privilege of the Floor and Rich just pointed out, that neighborhood and that community are in need of something more than they're currently getting, right? And that could be a myriad of services, right? It's not just law enforcement, but I do think that the city has a responsibility to step up. I think as a county, we are quick to action, and we want to preserve and protect access to Lisa's other points, right? I hope this becomes not a barrier, but allows people more access to these services. But I do think that the city needs to be part of this conversation, and this shouldn't be another example of leaving the county holding the bag to create a safe environment around one facility. And so I just put that out there because I look to our colleagues in the city to do more in this area. And I don't know what the right solution is, but I hope that they will be an increasing part of the conversation and committed to making sure that these services are most accessible to all.
Well, that will be lovely when that day comes, Greg. But meanwhile, we've got an obligation to protect our employees and our clients. So that's where we are. All right, let's vote. Lee.
Yes.
Greg.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Rich.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So thank you. That resolution passes. The last thing I see on our agenda, there are advisory board appointments. Let's see, Jennifer Majka to the Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Committee. Katrina, is this something we have to vote on, or is this an information item?
No, this will need a vote.
This will need a vote. Okay. So would somebody like to move Dr. Majka's appointment? Rich? And I will second that. So are we ready to vote? Lee?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. There's an information item for a budget adjustment and transfer for the finance department. That's in your packet, FYI. Does anybody have any comments or concerns they'd like to bring to the committee's attention? I don't see a hand anywhere. So with that, I guess we are adjourned. Thank you all for a concise and efficient meeting. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks.
Thank you.